You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, hello again, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you with us, whatever time of day it might be in your world. This is Doug Thorpe, and you're listening to another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Today, my guest is going to introduce us to a blueprint that she has been able to perfect over time. It's something that's based in some neuroscience, and as many of you who follow my show know, I'm a fan of understanding that and adding that to your horizon of leadership experience. But my guest is named Katarina Hanssens Carlson. She is calling in from Sweden. Katarina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here.
I do always like to have my guests explain a little bit of their journey to discover, their superpower and where they land now. And you touched on it while we were in the green room, but share with our guests, our listeners, your journey to understand and get to where you are now.
Of course, yeah, great question. Well, as you probably know, Doug, Dr. George Land found that we are actually dumbing children in schools. So children start off at 98% creative genius, and when they're teenagers, it's down to 12%. When they're adults, it's down to 2%. So I wouldn't say I was dumbed down that much necessarily, but I knew I didn't know who I was or what I was really wanted to be up to in the world. So I became a teacher, like many people who are lost. Unfortunately, they say, well, I know what a teacher does. I've been with teachers all my school life. So I became a teacher, and I was not only disappointed, I was shocked by the educational system that it actually does. This is global. I mean, it's not just in the States. We dumb down our children unless it's a very special school like Montessori or Waldorf or Summerhill in the UK. So I started off as a teacher. I loved the actual teaching, but I didn't like the system. So I became a psychotherapist. I trained as a psychotherapist. I had my own psychotherapy center in the south of Helsingborg. I'm actually from the UK. I'm originally Scots and Belgian, but I married a Swede. I had a therapy center in the south of Sweden in Helsingborg, and then in Stockholm. And I was one of the top 2 psychotherapists, but I was not fulfilled. So I went to the States, because there you can find everything. So I became an entrepreneur. I found out that I was an entrepreneur and loved it. And then I found my calling. One was to create the blueprint, the neuroscience blueprint, which guided me to find out who I was, what I was up to, and where I was going. And for that, I needed to find my core values. And my core values are truth, greatness, and vision. And truth means who am I? Authentically, who is Katarina Hanssens Carlson? Because if I don't know that, I don't know anything about my life, right? So, and it's the same for leaders. They absolutely need to know their authentic and peak identity. And we don't talk about that enough. So I found my identity. I created basically my own blueprint. I found my greatness. Now, greatness sounds very arrogant, but we all have it, Doug. You found your greatness as a podcaster. So, we all have that in us, this greatness. And children know all about it, up to the age of 6 or 7 anyway. So I found that, I found my vision, I found my sabotage strategy as well. And because everybody has one. And when you turn that around, you are set to win. So then I thought, well, this is not just about you, Katarina. There's so many people like you in the world who want to know, who am I as an entrepreneur? Who am I as a leader? And so I created the entrepreneurial and leadership blueprint. So, and
I
since
love it.
that day, I've thrived every single day of my life.
Well, you raise an excellent point, and that is that so many probably are products of the school system they were raised in. They go into adult life with various forms of programming, pre-programming, or in, as your word, dumbing down of what their creative genius might have been otherwise.
Yes.
And part of me, I don't want to digress, but I'm reminded of a great Jerry Seinfeld comedy sketch. He said, when we're little, we are thinking about up. We want to go up.
Yes.
Stand up, wait up, let's go up, but then along the way you're told and sit down, be quiet, go down, and and
That
I don't
is
remember
so
all the
true.
combinations, but he has a whole great point of it,
To
and it's
sit
true.
down, be quiet, listen to me, and shut up in school. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And do what you're told.
And
And don't.
which clearly stifles all the creative flow that might
Yes.
be organically happening, and the curiosity and, the movement in the classroom. I'm curious. I see something I've never seen before. Let me go look at that. Let's see what that is. And it goes, stop that, sit down, be quiet,
And
and
then let's explore the world, teacher, because I want to be an astronaut, for
yeah,
example. That's a
yeah,
typical 7-year-old.
yeah,
And the teacher says, you're never going to be an astronaut. Sit down and be quiet and listen to this biology lesson or whatever it is.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
we should be doing the opposite. Okay, you want to be an astronaut? Let's do some science.
yeah,
Let's find out how that works. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So, and the other thing I think that and what you were saying at the start was this idea of for those who want to be entrepreneurs, I think there's an ebb and flow, and there is a lot of things to be considered. And I have, for the last several years, worked in a space where we are talking with people who are a little bit burned out about their corporate job, or in your case, their teaching job or their therapy job, and they want to explore this thing called entrepreneurship. But one of the real pivotal moments I think that's important that is often overlooked in the many, many courses and webinars and training that's out there about how to become an entrepreneur is the question, are you really wired for it?
Yes,
And
absolutely. Are you tenacious enough? Are you resilient enough? Are you resourceful enough? Because it takes courage, and it's
right,
not a bed of roses. It challenges you the whole time.
there's a risk tolerance factor that has to be assessed. And, when you're in that corporate job, you get used to the fact that, well, in most cases, 99.9% of the time, if you show up, do your assignments, you're going to get your paycheck. And there's security in that for
Yeah,
many.
there's no risk. Yeah,
There's no risk. You get sucked into it now. Companies have struggles and they lay people off, yes, yes, and all of that. But it's vastly different from what it means to be an entrepreneur when your biggest client shorts you on your check or delays paying your check, and now you got to worry about how to make payroll for 10 or 15 or 30 people. And that's a high risk, high stakes scenario.
it is. And even if you don't have any employees, you still have to pay the bills. So,
Right, right,
so yeah. But on the flip side, once you know who you are, you know your driving purpose, you know your vision, you're bound to be resilient. You're bound to be resourceful. You're going to go, over the hurdles or around or under the hurdles. You're going to find a way. Because why? Because you've got a driving purpose. Because you've got a vision, and because it makes sense to you, and you're not working for somebody else's vision, you're working for your own vision. So you grow as an entrepreneur, which we're all supposed to be doing anyway, right?
right, right. Well, and one more thought, back to the dumbing down in school, and I can totally connect with that. My daughter and her husband are both teachers, and they've endured it now for going on 20 years. And but I hear their stories. They're not fulfilled. They're not excited. They're not motivated. They're
Oh,
grinding in the system, and
yes.
now they're because of the time vested. We have a whole different system, as you may know, about retirement money and relative to teaching. And they're into the system, and if they stop now, they wouldn't get much of anything in retirement. They have to get over the goal line in the next 5 to 8 years to maximize their long-term benefit of having done all that. So they're caught. They're trapped. There's no good reason to leave, but there's not a very good reason to stay. So
Teaching can be very boring because it's the same curriculum year after year, that this information has to be absorbed by all the children, which is not, because some are interested, some are not, some are motivated, some are not. And there are tests, and then there are exams, and you have to pass the exams. And it is, I'm sorry, Doug, it is so boring.
yeah,
Me,
yeah.
school is so boring. So we have global leadership schools as well, which we are creating the most dynamic, innovative schools in the world, which starts with learning 3 languages before the age of 6, because children are natural linguistic geniuses before the age of 6. So why not
Mhm.
teach them languages before they can even read and write properly? Why not? Because they love communicating. They love asking why. And then when they're 7 years old, you start their entrepreneurial journey. If they want to, if they choose to do it. Most children think they're great entrepreneurs. And then they make their mistakes all the way through school and then leave school with a business they can monetize.
Fascinating. Well, let's talk about your blueprint. What typically, if someone like, well, let's say like me, if I signed up and I said, "All right, Katarina, I need your help. I want to totally re-engineer what I think I've been doing all this time." Where do we start? What
Where do we start? We start with who you really are. We start with your identity. I mean, a lot of people come to me, Doug, and I've lived in the States for 12 years. I had a client in California who said, Katarina, I have to be honest with you. I'm really skeptical. I've been looking for, my purpose, my driving purpose, my vision, my blueprint for 50 years. And you're going to find all that in 4 hours. And the answer is, and you may have asked me this, Doug. The answer is yes. You have all the answers within you. You just haven't asked yourself the right questions. And I have all the right questions. I'll take you all the way through it. So how do we start? With your identity, Doug. Who have you been in your life at your peak? We take you back to a moment where you excelled. You were brilliant. You're probably thinking of that moment right now. And this can take up to 2 hours because it's so important. Identity is important. If you don't know who you are, at your peak, then how can you be a leader? How can you be an entrepreneur? How can you be a real, well, yeah, I'll go as far as to say, how can you be a real human being? 100%, you're a human being.
Yeah.
So we all have that moment where we absolutely excel. And some of my clients say, yes, but that was 20 years ago. Doesn't matter. I don't care if you were 5 years old or 7 years old and sold all your toys and bought a bike because your parents couldn't afford it. That was you being an entrepreneur. That was you being a leader. And then we make an I am statement around that. And you look at that every single day for a year, 3 years, 5 years, and you remember who you truly are. So then you turn up to meetings, you turn up every single day, even if you're working alone, as that being, as that peak, in that peak state. Why? Because, this is me. So we start with that. Then we go on to what's stopping you? What has ever stopped you in your life, Doug? What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? And who were you being in that moment? What did you say about yourself? Often, because I have a psychotherapeutic background, I can go into like a situation where my client has had a traumatic experience, let's say as a child. And what we do as a child when we're being abused or going through a traumatic experience, we make up a story about what it is, because we're asking ourselves why. And we may make up a story that I'm useless, I'm worthless, I'm bad, there's something wrong with me, anything like that. And most of us have been through that at least one traumatic experience in our lives, or I'm not lovable, whatever it is. That is what's going to stop us all the way through our lives. It's a lie. Why is it a lie? Because it's not. What's the test of truth? Has it always been true? For example, if I say I'm useless, has it always been true that I was useless? Well, I don't know. Was it true at that moment that I thought I was useless? Yes. Am I always going to be useless for the rest of my life? Well, I hope not. So that must be a lie. All right. So it's a lie. So you turn it around and go, okay, so how can I be one of the most productive people on this planet? How can I be one of the people who makes an impact, leaves a legacy in my life from being useless to leaving a legacy? Is a huge leap. But if my client is willing to take that, then now he's reinventing himself. Okay. So the next part is, what's my habit? Everybody has a bad habit. It could be procrastination. It can be bad self-talk, negative self-talk. It can be, there's 1,000 different habits we have. It could be even something like, well, I want to lose weight, but I refuse to exercise. Whatever it is, whatever our attitude, our habit is, but we all have a debilitating habit, and we need to turn that around, because our false identity, what I call the lie, the inauthentic identity plus our habit, is our sabotage strategy. And it sabotages our finances, our business, our relationships, our family, our spouse. It sabotages everything, and particularly the relationship you have with yourself. So
yeah, and you packed a lot in there, and there is so much to that. And I think classically, at least in the professional coaching realm, we do talk a lot about limiting beliefs. And of course, for instance, those of us that are ICF certified, we're cautioned, don't get into the psychotherapy part of the world. You're not licensed. And ironically, there's a little bit of that negativity to talk in there. You can't do that. You're not supposed to do that. Our code of conduct,
yeah, exactly.
Says no, don't go there. And I get that. And I mean, yes, there's legal considerations and all of that, but to your point, that sort of reinforcing bias is all around us if we're not careful. If we're not careful to really secure the identity we want to believe in, and hold as ultimate truth of possibility. And I think it's that flipping the script from the negative to the positive, because to your point, we all had that upbringing where somebody told us something about, you're not fast enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not tall enough, you're not smart enough, you're not fat, whatever. It goes on and on and on, and we have to be able to turn that off. I use the classic example when I was in graduate school. I was getting an MBA, and at my school at the time, we had the trifecta. We had to write a thesis, we had to take a comprehensive exam, and we had to sit for an oral board. And there was a finance professor on my oral board that just didn't like, I didn't like him, he didn't like me, and it was just a bad start. And when it was all said and done, he said, "Mr. Thorpe, I'm going to confer your degree. However, you have to make me a pledge." And I thought, okay, this is odd. We'll go ahead. What is that? He said, "I want you to promise you will never take a job in the U.S. financial system." I said, "What?" And he said, "I'm not convinced you have a good enough grasp of financial matters. And I think you would be a detriment to any financial institution you ever went to work for. And you have to promise me you'll never do that." And I was young, I was still in my 20s, and I thought, okay, whatever, yes, sir, I'll do that. I'll take that pledge. And I thought, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you have no standing in my life. You have no authority to make that requirement. Um, so I got my degree and moved on. And guess what? About 2 years later, I joined a regional bank, and that bank ultimately became JP Morgan Chase, and I was there for 20
Wow.
years.
Wow, what a great story that is. It's like, excuse me, sir, what right have you got to tell me what I do with my life?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, short-sighted as he was, I found great opportunity. Now, was I deeply involved in critical, complex financial analysis at the bank? No, I was not. I had peers and colleagues that did that work,
Yeah,
but there was a place and there was a role for me to, be a banker and lead teams and
you're a real human being banker, right?
right,
Uh,
right,
the friendly banker, the one who wants to help people, right?
right.
Which we need.
So, it is such a challenge to turn off that negative talk that is going on in the chatter. I've actually used an example so simple. It's the cartoonish character of the two angels on your shoulders. The the devil and the angel. Talking.
That's
And and I had a client that really grabbed onto that visual, and they had come to me admitting there was serious suffering of an imposter syndrome, and we spent a lot of time talking about why does that even exist? And to your point, it's like, are you always useless? No. Or do you
yeah.
sometimes feel useless? Yes, we all do. And we got down to that. Which angel are you going to listen to? And she said that was a powerful thing, and she, had been called into a meeting and immediately heard that devil on her shoulder talking. And she said, in my mind, I went thump, and it just knocked him off my shoulder.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Because it's interesting because the reptilian brain is right here, right? And the reptilian brain is the center of the sabotage strategy, and it tries to keep you safe and small. So an angel sitting there, like the black angel, saying, "You can't do this. Who do you think you are?" That's exactly where where they reside. And
Yeah.
you didn't listen to this professor. Good for you. And she understood that her black angel was talking, and so she said, "Shut up."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, tell us about some of your other maybe case study wins and pivots and advances that people have made using your methods.
Absolutely. Um, well, one of my clients was a star in the corporate world. She was on the board of directors. She was the only woman. She was a brilliant marketer. Um, but she was sent all over the place, all over the United States to market for this company. And she missed her family. She felt she was missing out on life. And in the end, she was miserable. She was overworking. She was burnt out, basically. And she came to me and she said, look, I don't know if you can help me, Katarina, but I'm desperate. I need to have a way out of corporate because I cannot go on any longer. This isn't a life for me. So we did her entrepreneurial blueprint. And now she's a leader. She's not only an entrepreneur, she's a leader of mainly corporate women who are coming out of the corporate world and becoming entrepreneurs themselves. So it's completely transformed her life. And she's absolutely brilliant and she thrives.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think people, when they face a reality that they've discovered they've been on the wrong journey, the wrong path for a time, there are certainly a lot of different options of maybe who to talk to and what to consider doing that. But I think the vast majority of people still, they feel that unsettling sense that I'm in the wrong place. I'm not a fit at my company or in my role. I need to move on. And so what they do is they simply polish up their resume and they hit the job market and they look for a change so that now they'll have a new opportunity. But it's kind of like, you know, I don't know, going out shopping for clothes. If you know what you really need is a pair of shoes and you show up at the suit rack, well, you know, you're not gonna do the right thing. And I saw this manifested back in the tragedy of 2008 with the financial crisis. I, as most of my listeners know, started a nonprofit to help job seekers. And quickly, one of the first things we figured out was that people who had lost jobs through no fault of their own had lost their identity. They didn't know who they were. They, you know, would come in the door just almost as zombies walking in. And I started asking people when they came for the first time and we were meeting and greeting, and I would say, tell me something about yourself. And they would immediately start into, well, I'm an accountant or I'm an engineer or I'm a customer service manager or, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'd go, nope, wrong answer. And it was like cold water in their face. You know, what do you mean? And I'm going, no, you didn't tell me anything about you. You told me what you did. You told me how you've earned your paycheck, but tell me about you. And that kind of got, huh? What are we talking about here? I need a job. Yeah, I know you need a job. We're going to get you there. But so we had our own program that the first 3 steps out of 6 was reconnecting with that sense of identity and passion and purpose to, you know, help drive the process. And once you got that identity, then you could decide where would I be a good fit. And we had people that were doing 180-degree opposite, you know, movements in their career journey, having discovered and making that connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because we're not our name. We're not what we do. But most people, if you ask them, who are you? They usually cannot come up with a compelling I am statement. Usually not. Yeah. So yes, a lot of people ask, you know, they've jumped through the hoops, they've been through school, they may, like you, have got a PhD or a doctorate, and they still don't know who they are. And they're asking, is this all there is to my life?
Mm-hmm.
When you ask that question, you're ready for an answer. And the answer is yes, there's a lot more that you haven't discovered. And the number one person to discover is who you are.
Right. I love it. Well, Katarina, this has been great. Thank you so much for sitting in and sharing with us. Tell people the best way to get a hold of you.
Probably LinkedIn at Katarina Hanssens Carlson. I'm the only Katarina Hanssens Carlson, but my formal name is Catherine Carlson. But I've really enjoyed being with you, Doug, and I'd like to encourage everybody to give you a great review, number one. And number two, I'd like to, for everybody who's listened to the whole podcast, I'd like to offer the first chapter of my book, which is all about identity. Identity as an entrepreneur, identity as a leader. It will take you through all the steps. So go to my LinkedIn account and write in uppercase, capital letters, the word leader. And I'll send you the first chapter of my book.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate that word, Katarina, and we'll sure have that information available for folks. But thank you one last time for sitting in. Really enjoyed it, and pleasure to meet you and understand your great work.
Thank you so much, Doug. By the way, my book is called Set to Win.
Set to Win. All right. Love it. Love it. We'll have that link in the show notes as well, folks. So this is the point of the show. I like to remind you that we do have a video version of this over on YouTube, channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Hop over there, check out the archives, give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, join the channel, whatever you wish. But also, more importantly, I'd love to hear your comments. Give me some ideas on other themes, topics, or guests you'd like to see and hear, and we'll certainly entertain that. But with that, I'm going to say goodbye, sign off. Go out there and make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.